Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Jay and Tim. What's up, gentlemen?
Kyle, better known as Space Cowboy. Kyle's got some kick-ass glasses on today. What's up with that, Kyle?
So if you're wondering both about the glasses and also the orangish hue of my face, I have not been tanning. That is a reflection of my monitor, which is currently in night mode.
Oh, yeah.
And the glasses are also to reduce the blue light. So makes eye strain less bad.
Just so we're talking straight here, Kyle.
Yeah.
We can see the full reflection in those, so don't do anything bad on your computer, all right, buddy?
Oh, yeah, I see you guys.
Yeah.
Look right there, and there you guys.
Oh, yeah.
There's me. There's Tim. There's Jay. Okay, there's the points changes right there. In the other eyeball. Okay. All right, let me just close Discord here.
Yeah.
Don't need to see that. All right. Yeah, so
Lots going on. A lot.
Right. It has been. We are currently recording on a Wednesday, which is a little unusual for us, but Jay was on vacation.
Yep.
And of course, we were also waiting on some rules articles and point changes from AMG, which we got. So this is, we're gonna have a lot to talk about.
So we got 2 of the 4 articles. Is that the math?
we got the points, and then we got 2 of the supposed 4 rules articles.
Which, listen, I know we're all about hot takes here, and that's what we do, and that's what keeps the monies in our pocketbooks. But this whole, like, we're going to do 2 articles, then 2 articles, but then not release the rules until mid to late January is such a weird way and hard to, like, I don't know. Like, we're going to have our hot takes, but for me, it's like I've been half paying attention while I was on vacation going, well, I don't know what this means in context. I think that was my quote for Kyle on the points blog post that we did on our website, where it's just like, I don't know. Like, it seems like seems like there's a bunch of stuff coming that we don't have context for. So, seems good.
Yeah. And I suspect even after the 4 articles are done, there's still going to be some stuff that surprises us when we get the full rules on the 16th.
If they're combining and rewriting everything, right? Like, I think we really need to be careful to comb through it, because if history says anything, there's going to be mistakes in there. Just
anytime you take a 100-page document, and
well, also, I'm looking at you, Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
Coming out as special forces, but not really.
Yeah.
And then
they did fix that today.
Yeah, of course they did.
But
But I'm just saying, not great on their proofreading thus far. So that's why I guess what I'm saying, this isn't a slant or whatever, a diss on AMG. This is more of a caution for everyone else, that if we see something in there that seems odd, like, maybe we ask, and before we like react to, just like, if it seems out of place, we go, maybe that's a misprint. Let's ask about that.
Yeah, and there's something specifically that we will get to in the cover rules that I think is maybe not, but it's so wildly different from what we currently do that, and it's not something that was mentioned in the article, even though it's extremely different from what we currently do, that I think it's worth highlighting.
Well, wasn't there something too, and we'll get to it, but there was something they left out, and then they updated the article with an update on the cover rules as well. So
it was a
strange. We'll get to it.
It was more just that they screen capped something that they didn't discuss originally, but it seems like it was always in the rules. They just didn't show it to us, and then people were like, well, what about this? And then they were like, oh, I guess we need to include this other bit. So
hey, listen, they're doing their job, right? We're going to be talking about Star Wars Legion for the next month and a half. You know, it's annoying, but it is what it is.
And like I said in the points article, the first of many articles that will also be on our site to talk about this stuff. As a blog editor, I'm not one to complain about a bunch of article releases, because we get to do an article for each of these too. So click on those, please. Yeah,
Get
and
them clicks.
yeah, and frankly, as someone that is just from a player perspective, as someone that is trying to figure out what I'm doing for LVO, I would much rather have like some information now and then get the rest of it on the 16th than be totally in the dark
Yeah.
until the 16th. Because at least now, if we're getting like the big picture stuff, I can kind of apply that to my theory crafting, and I might just hopefully have to make smaller adjustments on the 16th when we get the full set. It seems possible that, you know, the plan was always to release, who knows if the plan was always to release the full text like a good month after these articles finished. I don't know. That doesn't seem like it would be, but
Maybe.
who knows?
It seems interesting knowing that LVO is a world qualifier and leading right into Worlds to release rules to 10 days. 10 days. If it's the 16th or 17th, that's 10 days before LVO. That seems strange, but you know, hey, whatever.
Well, I think it's better than like, because that means that LVO will essentially be the test case
Yes,
for the new
Worlds.
rules.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather LVO be the test case than Worlds be like the first major tournament with the new rules, right? So
Oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
they're not going to change anything. I mean, unless something's really bad, maybe they would, but
probably not, but it will give the players and equally as important, probably the judges, like a good feel for where the problem areas are going to be. So
all right. Well, all right.
Anyway.
Why don't we get going, Kyle?
yeah, let's do it. So essentially what we're going to do here, we're going to very quickly highlight the changes in the rules that they've previewed. We will talk in detail about the points because those rule changes kind of inform the points in some ways. And then we will circle back and talk in more detail about the actual rules changes. So
All right.
super short version. They are changing how cover and line of sight works. There's essentially the TLDR, the short version of this is that they removed the center to center step from cover, and they made silhouettes reciprocal, line of sight reciprocal, which means you check line of sight from any part of the silhouette, not just, you know, a specific point like above the center. And they're also adding silhouettes for every unit to include notched base units. So otherwise, the part about checking whether stuff is obscured is the same. In practice, it just means that stuff is going to get cover a lot more often, because it used to be that it had to be obscured and you had to have that center to center line cross terrain. Now it just has to be obscured, and it doesn't matter how much it's obscured by. So you could essentially have a unit that has like a toe behind a building, and 98% of the unit is visible, and it technically gets cover from that building. So we could talk about how we feel about that later, but that's the upshot of effectively what they're doing is removing the center to center line step from cover and just going purely with is the unit obscured, yes or no.
Okay. We're not reacting now, so
right. We're just
I'll give you my
quickly
reactions
summarizing. Yeah.
soon there, Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah. Also, they're changing how wound allocation works. It will never be as simple as no more scoping, because you have to actually change the wound allocation rules to prevent scoping, since that is a side effect of the wound allocation rules. But that's the short version. When a unit is targeted by an attack, when you're assigning wounds, you may assign wounds to units, to models that the attacker cannot see. They also, the thing that they added to the article, which was a screen cap from the rules, is that the wounds that you suffer are limited by the wounds threshold, which is an important distinction, which we'll get to, of the visible models. In other words, most of the time, you won't be able to cause more wounds than you can see. It gets kind of weird with multi-wound models that are wounded, which we'll get to, but that's the short version. There will be some other edge cases where you can now corner peek with things that are not sniper teams, potentially. So yeah, we'll get to all that when we get to actually hot taking these rules changes. The last major rules change,
Hit
which
me.
of these, I think is probably the most relevant for the points changes specifically is that they're introducing passing.
Oh, didn't we talk about this? Like,
We did.
well, yeah, I don't remember what
we did an episode where we talked about whether we thought this was a good idea.
Yeah.
I have some opinions.
Hear
Actually,
them soon.
yeah, you'll hear them later. I won't spoil it, but I think that you'll be surprised by my opinions. Let's put it that way.
I'm always surprised by your opinion.
Yeah. But that does affect the fact that, just without getting into the details of how this works, which the nuances of this again are very important, but it does impact the points and specifically the faction balance, because some factions have a harder time upping their activations. So that's the short version of the rules changes.
All right.
Shall we dive into points?
Oh, I guess. Why not?
All right. So we have an article on the site about the points, which you can check out, thefifthtrooper.com/blog.
Nice.
This one we actually did kind of like a fantasy football article where we asked for reactions from all the staff on the various points changes. So if you want to read that, you can check out kind of like a snippet of a bunch of reactions from the Fifth Trooper staff on how this affects each faction. But on this cast, we're gonna just walk through them. There's not even that many, so I feel like we can kind of just list them and then talk about them. I guess we can let's do the neutral upgrades up front and then one faction at a time. How does that sound?
Sure.
Good.
Yep.
All right. Neutral upgrades: vigilance +7 up to 12, burst of speed +7 up to 10, grappling hooks +1 up to 2, offensive push +2 up to 6, situational awareness +2 up to 4, tenacity +2 up to 6, up close and personal +3 up to 8.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any feelings specifically just on the neutral upgrades?
Yeah. Grappling hooks is surprising.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, like, this is why. So I was on vacation and we did the thing where he's like, Kyle's like, oh yeah, let's get everybody's quote. I'm like, well, none of this makes any sense. Yeah, I don't know, we're missing something. So yeah, that one seems surprising. Burst of speed seems excessive, but I mean, 7 points. Holy moly! I maybe 3. I think 6, maybe 6 points or 7 points would have been reasonable. Putting it at 10, I think you effectively kill burst of speed for most people, for most lists. I think there's a few. I mean, because what's going to happen is you're going to start questioning it now, right? When against other force powers, and I think Vader probably would still use burst of speed, and maybe Palp and Yoda, but like the Op Luke, you might want something else in there in exchange for burst of speed, so there's other options. That one was a surprising increase. Vigilance, I think that was a lever that didn't need to be pulled that hard. I think if you're going to fix pikes with the points, which we can talk about, you didn't have to go as hard into vigilance. But
of all the dodge spam units, pikes are the least dependent on vigilance.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, we can get to that when we get to the factions. But
with vigilance, I was also surprised. Like they did +7 to make it 12. It's like, why didn't you just make it 10? Like
it's a weird number.
Yeah, it's a weird.
Yeah.
It's like it's at the end of the day, it's like they wanted to make it +7, whatever. But it is that 12 points just seemed a little odd. But
yeah. Sorry, real quick, and then Tim, you can go ahead. The other one that was really shocked. The other one, all the other ones, where I was like, okay, but the one that was really weird to me was the up close and personal. Like I was like, well, what? I haven't seen anything that would make me go, hey, I gotta add 3 points to that. Like, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, it's like dodge, like spamming took a hit, and like melee units for some reason took a hit, even though I don't think we've seen a ton of them recently. I mean, the up close and personal, I was really surprised at that, because really the units that like make the best use of it are really units that aren't doing the best right now.
Yeah.
probably the best sort of most meta unit that uses up close and personal really well would be Han. But like Sabine loves up close. Like Rebel Boba, Grievous. I mean Rebel Boba still like is just coming out now, so has yet to see how much of an impact he'll make. But it seems like a weird change.
It's not a super common training upgrade.
No.
The situational awareness, offensive push, and tenacity, those are all common training upgrades. So if you're kind of just narrowly looking at it like this upgrade is taken a lot and it needs to go up, I can see the case for those. I feel like I don't know. The training slot is weird because the upgrades are also situational and unique, and none of them are really similar to each other. So tenacity is a great example, but tenacity is like the only hit things harder in melee training upgrade. So if you got a melee unit, you take tenacity. Like this is, you know, it was a super common upgrade, but it's also the only upgrade that does anything remotely like what it does, which is make things hit harder in melee. So this is essentially like a +2 point tax on melee units.
Yep.
Offensive push, I feel like was probably pretty fairly costed at 4. Is definitely a common upgrade, but now I think you just take Hunter where you were taking offensive push before.
Yeah.
Well, you take Hunter or the units that have a comms upgrade. You just take
transponder.
Transponders.
Yeah. And situational awareness. This is a straight hit to rebels.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like just rebels because nobody else was taking it. Pikes have it built in. Yeah, it's if there's a theme for me to these points upgrades, because some of the units most affected by like this one, for example, situational awareness are Jin, Sabine, and like Leia and Rebel Mandos. And none of those units are meta or really very good right now. Arguably Sabine, but
Cassian a little bit. Like, not really though, I guess. But I don't know. It was nice to have some dodges on Cassian, you know. But, yeah.
Right. But I guess my point is clearly they're hitting this for like the Rebel Triple DOT captain thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of defensible if you're hitting dodge spam as like a broad theme of this. But what's missing is like, you know, sort of the second order effect of, well, this makes these units that were already bad worse. So maybe we should offset their cost by this. You know, like if you're going to make situational awareness +2, and that's an upgrade that Rebel Mandos take, and they're bad, you know, you could at least make like Rebel Mandos -2, right? Yeah. But anyway,
or you could like increase the captain, right? That would effectively
specifically just increase the captain without increasing situational awareness. Yep. Yeah. So I don't know. I get the intent here. It's you know, curbing dodge spam is a noble cause, a worthy cause, I think.
Agreed.
So
but it was like part of it almost feels like, what gives out a dodge? Yeah, let's just increase all those points. You know what I mean? Like up close and personal, like that just seems because it's a dodge on it that's why they increased it. I don't understand the reason other than that.
Yeah, I think
it's not like we've seen that take over the meta, and like we're really struggling now with up close and personal, you know.
Yeah, I think what this doesn't do is essentially parse the nuanced differences between the different. There's essentially 3 different kinds of dodge builds, right? There's rebel dodge builds, which rely on captains with DLTs and situational awareness and 2 copies of vigilance, so they can use nimble. There's Republic dodge builds, which essentially just rely on Padme and a copy of vigilance, usually with pikes, but also with clones, like sharing dodges. And then there are pike dodge builds, which the best ones have 1 or sometimes, well, it's never 0, because if you have them all, you have 1 copy of vigilance, but it's essentially like 1 copy of vigilance for those pike dodge builds, and then you're just relying on independent for most of your dodges. And of course, they don't have situational awareness because they have outmaneuver printed on their cards. So none of these neutral upgrade hits really affect pikes that much. And I think that was probably already the most powerful of those 3 dodge builds. And I think that's still the case even after these changes. So, but I get where they were coming from. Like I said, noble cause, nerf dodge spam. I think maybe they just didn't quite get hit in a way that leaves them on even footing after this. Do we want to just do Shadow Collective first, since we're kind of already talking about it?
Seems good.
Pike Capo Commander +3 up to 48. Pike Syndicate Foot Soldiers +4 up to 44. Pike Capo Personnel +2 to 18. Black Sun Vigo Personnel +2 to 20.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, these all seem good.
Yeah, I mean,
good and necessary. I might have even gone a little bit further.
Yeah.
Especially considering the pass mechanic.
Yeah.
Because really all you're doing with these points increases with Shadow Collective is you're either like cutting a capo upgrade or a heavy upgrade or two, or you're just dropping the activation down to 9. And I think now you're just dropping activation off down to 9. You can still take 5 beefy pikes, which is the capo plus the disruptor. You can take 5 of those. You can take 3 capo commanders with the Inspire command upgrade. The name is escaping me. And improvised orders, and you can take Maul with all of the upgrades that he normally wants, including vigilance, and it comes out to exactly 800 points, and that's 9 activations. So you can still take Maul, 3 capos, and 5 beefy pikes, and now being at 9 activations is really not that bad. So yeah, I think that's the dodge build that survives these point changes. Yep. And it's probably the one that also needed to be nerfed the most. So I don't know if these really went far enough, but
it's strange. Yeah, it's strange.
The increases were definitely necessary.
Yep.
So props to them for like doing that, even though, you know, these units, there were people being like, well, they only came out in June. You know, it's depending on when they did these, that's not long enough. And clearly, like, they were paying attention and they saw that dodge spam needed to get hit. And they did that. So
yeah. Yep.
Should we talk about Rebels since we're talking about dodge spam?
Yeah, the extensive Rebel changes.
Sure. None.
None. Literally none.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This is yeah. If there's like a downside, I think that most of these points changes are positive. All the changes that were made, I think, are good and necessary. It's just more like the changes that were not made. Yeah. That's the biggest gaping hole in here, and the fact that there were like no decreases that Rebels got to kind of offset
the fact that they're like basically unusable. Yeah,
I wouldn't go that far.
I would take that, Kyle.
I actually think Han builds specifically. There's one rules change that is huge for Rebels and specifically for Han, and that's basically when they get rid of scoping. The upshot of that is you can have, you know, stick your unit leader or one model out in a line of sight, and if your opponent shoots that unit, they can only do 1 wound at a time. So use reckless diversion on that unit. And if it's a 5 or 6 man rebel trooper unit, they have to shoot that unit 5 or 6 times before
that's fair. Yeah.
before eliminating it. So yeah, it's an interesting buff to reckless diversion.
Yeah, that's all fair. It's just like, I don't know. It seems like there was some stuff in Rebels that could have gone down in points. You know,
Rebels got myrtleized. To use the Dark Trooper parlance by the neutral upgrade increases.
Yep.
The average, I shouldn't say average, the minimum Rebel dodge spam build, which is 2 commanders with vigilance and then 4 of the captain DLTs, went up by 22 points. And that's like without the, you know, if you're including Luke in there, that's another 7 for burst of speed, probably. Yeah. And maybe another 2 for tenacity. So those builds also relied extremely heavily on snipers, which I think are a big loser of some of these rules changes. So yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, I feel, and we'll get back to it, but I mean, I think, they did what they were supposed to do for the most part. Like, I was looking at my Cassian K2 list, which was a 12 activation list. And I think I was at 788 with the pikes and all this stuff. And then with the new rules changes, it went over 800, right? So I was like, okay, well, that's good. They did what they were supposed to do there.
Yeah.
So that's a positive.
Yeah, like I said, all the changes that were made were necessary and good.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like there's a lot of second order. There's some second order effects is kind of the wrong word. There's a lot of collateral damage here that was like not mitigated in the follow through, basically.
The list I was playing in Invader went up 40 points. Because I had tenacity, I had up close and personal, I had pikes, I had vigilances.
Yeah, that's a lot. Now, all this said, they have said that they're like not married to the yearly schedule for points changes.
No.
So the optimist in me wants to be like, well, they probably understand that there's going to be some collateral damage here. Maybe they're going to wait 3 months to see how this shakes out, and then we'll get those rebel cuts to offset these increases to the competitive rebel builds.
I mean, it's and you're right, because it's like, I understand wanting to hit dodge spam, and hey, you did it, good job, right? But when you did that, you used more of a broader brush when a finer one would have done. And I think just increasing captains would have done the job. And when you go to generic points increases on generic cards, you're hitting everything, and I think that's not always thought about, right? You're just seeing, who's using it now, but that it's going to disrupt potential lists in the future, on unintended consequences, right?
Yeah.
All right, Separatist or Empire? Let's do Empire, I guess.
Let's do Empire.
Mortars went up 2.
Yep, 2 to 40.
Yep. And Death Trooper DLT 19 went down 4. Okay. I think the mortar thing makes sense now with the pass mechanic. Like at first I was like, why? And now it's like, oh yeah, no, with fire support and stuff in the pass mechanic. That makes sense. The Death Trooper DLT 19D down 40. Good. Yeah, it needed to go down. I mean, so did Death Troopers, but all right, the 19D, sure.
Yeah, I think the Empire changes here are the funniest to me. Particularly the DLT decrease, because that really stands out as like there are so many obviously bad units, ATRTs,
IRG,
both versions of Mandos. I don't know if I would agree with IRG.
Is anyone playing them?
I play them with Palp.
Okay. One commander you bring IRG with almost every. Have you ever seen IRG? No, you haven't.
Anyway, Droidicas,
you're a liar.
General Grievous, like there are so many just objectively bad units. And for some reason, like there's only, outside of Republic, this is the only points decrease in this entire points update. And Republic clearly has to do with like a broad brush theme, like you were talking about with those broad brush themes. So like, of all the bad units, and I don't even think Death Troopers are that bad, but of all like the underused units to pick to decrease, like why did they pick Death Troopers?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And why? Sure, okay, I hear you. Yeah, I do. But really, a few points wasn't the real problem with Death Troopers. Like, I think the unit needed to come down a couple points too, and the DLT to make them relevant.
I think that's debatable. I think they're fine.
I think you're
but
wrong.
even if you think they're bad, it's like, why of all the, I could probably list like 10 really bad units that just don't see any play in Legion. Of all those units, why did they just pick Death Troopers?
Well, maybe. Okay. All right. Conspiracy hat.
Okay.
You ready?
Listening.
maybe to match up with some of the stuff that's going on with the TV shows and having Death Troopers be a little bit more prevalent in the game is good for Lucasfilm marketing. Just a little thought. I don't think it's just a conspiracy I have. I don't think that's real, but I just made that up just now. Pretty good though, huh? Because then they have some in Andor.
They were in Andor.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also feel like Death Troopers have a very loyal player base that I've been talking about them for a long time.
I'm stretching.
I think
Kyle's
maybe,
right. It makes no sense. I'm just stretching. I'm just trying to figure out a reason.
I think Tim's reason might be a little bit closer to the truth, is that this is like a fanboy change, basically. Like, you know,
there's a lot of people who love Death Troopers.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like people in the Jin corner. Don't get me wrong, Jin is great, but there's a lot of like Empire stands out there that are clamoring about Death Troopers.
Sure.
I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's needed. It's just like this stands out to me as like of all the necessary like droidicas, like what like, literally nobody runs droidicas ever.
So here's a weird thing I just thought about. So we were talking about how it made sense, you know, to for the like I said, oh hey, yeah, that makes sense to increase the the mortars, right? But the MKs didn't get increased.
They were a little less common than mortars already.
Sure.
A little bit, not a lot of it.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Yeah.
Same idea though.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's something else we haven't seen. Who knows?
That absolutely could be the truth.
Yeah, notably not on this Empire list. Anything on Blizzard Force's roster.
Yeah. So bad. It's so bad.
I mean, my quote for the staff quotes was, "I'm Canadian. I can smell a blizzard brewing, and there's a blizzard brewing."
Yeah. I mean, so far, based on what we've seen, Blizzard Force has been essentially untouched, and even I think Blizzard Force actually got some buffs from the rules changes that we've seen so far, in multiple ways. So yeah, it could be that there's like some kind of structural about, you know, maybe to change the HRU cost, they're going to just do an edit to the Blizzard Force Battle Force PDF instead of putting it in their points change document. I don't know. You know, there could be another shooter drop here, but it is a very elephant in the room sized hole in these points changes.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yep.
All right. Separatists.
Sure. Yeah.
DSD Ion plus 15 to 25. RPS Magna Guard plus 6.
Yep. Both good.
Yeah. These are fine. I mean, you're kind of relegating the Ion to like super niche, straight up anti-armor builds, but I think that's kind of where it belongs.
Yeah.
It was really hurting internal
the Ion is as with Ion and the rest of the game we've seen, it's like either too good or not good.
Yeah.
That's sort of where Ion exists, just because of the keyword. And it being on the probably not as good side is better than the too good side.
Yep. Agree.
Like it's definitely within the points range where you could easily see a list that has 1, even 2, with like a special, like with a idea in mind about how to use them.
Yep.
And also if dodge spam starts like, or goes away mostly with the recent changes, then like range 4 CIS gun lines become a thing again.
Yep.
Get those E5Ss back out and Ion spiders. But the effect, like the 2 units that have got hit here were sort of 2 key components of that range 4 gun line, which seems correct.
Yeah.
These are great.
They both seem great and exactly what was needed.
Yep. 100%.
Yep.
No
Don't
DECA
disagree
decrease.
with that at all. I mean, I don't know. You're gonna have to decrease those things to like 5 for anybody.
Yeah, that's a structural issue. I know. It's just they're a unit that is just straight up super bad right now.
right now. I mean, since their inception.
I think they were fine in the core set, and that was it.
Well, when you could only play the other units in the core set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Republic, last but not least.
Hey, fine. I think this is what we were waiting for, right? Like, I think they needed love. I think they got some here, which is exactly right. I think a good, we can go through them, but a good points decrease across the board seems good.
Yeah. Arc full team -6, arc strike -3, phase 2's -2.
Yep.
DC 15, phase 1 -2, DP 23. That's the shotgun. In case you forgot about it. Phase
did.
1 -2. Phase 1 Z6 -1.
Sure.
Clone Comstack -1, clone engineer -4, clone medic -5.
Yeah. I mean,
The
it seems targeted towards 501st, but yeah.
I mean the sort of the key changes that I like, it's sort of down across the board, but things that sort of really draw my eye are the -3 in the strike teams, bringing strike teams back into usable probably. Also, especially like if the dodge spam starts going down a little bit, then arcs aren't affected as much by that. Also, the engineer and the medic being 14 and 15 respectively, especially the medic, like he's only 2
Yeah,
points more
that's
than a
super
phase 2
interesting now at 15.
and especially with the pass mechanic, meaning that Republic doesn't feel the need to get like try to push for axe quite as much anymore. I could easily see like a medic or even 2 in some lists, especially with like Yoda or Anakin or whatever.
Yeah.
But even in like a clone centric list, if you just sort of take a couple like pretty heavy units that have a medic in them, and then just go like, well, these are like 7 health squads basically instead of 6, or instead of 5, then yeah, adding 2 health for 15 points to clone squads sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I do think it's important to look at the context of the neutral upgrades here on Republic, because the really only competitive Republic lists before this change included generally at least 1 copy of Vigilance, 2 pikes and a capo, like at minimum. So that is a net increase of 7 for Vigilance. 2 pikes is another, usually the beefy pikes, so that's another 12 for 19, and then the capo is +3. So that's like +22 to kind of like the, what it was currently being fielded as competitive Republic lists.
Yeah.
And these changes don't really offset that much. They definitely make like pure clone lists better, but pure clone lists were like really bad. So I'm not sure this is it. The pass thing is really important for the context here, because on their own these changes look extremely conservative. That said, and maybe we can just segue into the pass thing.
Okay.
You want to just segue into the pass thing?
Yeah.
Because how the pass mechanic thing is worded has some really important implications for fire support specifically. Like it's more than just Republic often fielded 9 activations. The 9 activations is not as bad as it used to be. Fire support also got essentially an explicit buff with how this pass mechanic is worded, and of course Republic does the best fire supports. So should we do it? Let's just get into it. All right,
Do it. This is how we do it.
so as most of our listeners know, we talked about it on the past episode. I've talked about it in numerous other contexts. I was pretty against a pass mechanic.
Yep.
When this article got linked in the Discord and I saw the title, I had one of those feelings like when somebody calls you on the phone and they're like, I need to tell you something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit,
We need
what
to
is this
talk.
going to be? Yeah, we need to talk. You get that feeling like in your chest where you're like, oh god. I saw this pass mechanic on the tail end of this URL, and I had that same feeling. And then I read the rule and I was like, you know what? I kind of like this. Or at least I don't hate it, you know? Like, I don't know how necessary it is, but like if you're going to introduce a pass mechanic, I actually really like how they did it.
Yep.
They could have just like photocopied the MCP pass mechanic, which I think would have been terrible for Legion.
Bad. Yep.
And they didn't. They made something that seems to be very specifically tailored for Legion in a way that I think is actually interesting. So,
Yeah.
should we read the actual text?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
You know me, Jay. I like the nitty gritty nuances.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So there's the whole paragraph about basically what happens when it's your turn. You either do a face up order or you pull a token from the bag. That is all the same. Everything else after this is new. So alternatively, instead of drawing a token or doing a face up, a player may be able to pass. The player may pass if they have fewer remaining orders than their opponent. To see how many remaining orders a player has, add together the number of face up order tokens their army has on the battlefield in that player's order pool and on their command cards. When a player chooses to pass, they do not activate a unit and their turn ends. A player can only pass once per round.
Yeah, so I think, the reason they have that paragraph in the beginning is because it's basically saying, hey, if you have dead units, but they're still in your bag, like those count as orders towards the passing mechanic, right? And I think that's important to understand that though technically they're gone, if they're in your bag still, you're going to have to draw to get them out before you can get to your pass.
So
Potentially.
There's an important nuance there too, specifically with dead units. It has never come up before, so nobody ever does this, but it will now be important. When a unit dies and it has a face-up order token, you leave the token on the table.
Yeah.
You don't actually put the token back or remove the token from the game until the end phase.
Right. Yep.
So, and that is, it's a specific, I'll just read it. When a unit is defeated, its order token is removed from the game, either when an order token is drawn from the pool that does not match the rank of any unactivated unit on the battlefield or in the end phase. So, yeah, whether it's face up or not, if you kill a unit during the turn, that order token for most of the turn, if it's face up for all of the turn, it's going to essentially count against someone's order total. If it's in the bag, then they're only going to be able to pass after they draw that token, like a turn later, because they're going to have to draw the token, and then draw something else, activate that, and then after that pass. So, yeah. There's two things I really like about this.
Yep.
The first is you can only do it once per round.
Yeah.
So you're still kind of preserving the incentive to eliminate activations. And the second is just based on how this is worded, it's not straight up like a full. This is more like half of a pass, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And let me give an example. Suppose that you have 9 activations and your opponent has 10. If your opponent goes first, they're going to do their first activation, and then it's going to be your turn to, pull a token or potentially check for passing. But they've done one activation. They've got a face down order. So you have 9 units that you have not activated, and they have 9 units that they have not activated.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to pass.
Right.
If they go second, you go first, you've got 9, you go down to 8. They go first, they've got 10, they go down to 9. Now you can pass. Right. But so essentially what it does is, like, if you're down an activation and your opponent goes first, there's essentially no difference. The pass mechanic does nothing, which I think is fine. If you are down an activation and you go first, essentially what it does is your opponent still gets to go last, but it prevents them from going last twice after you're done. So it's not just like a straight up, I have 9 activations, you have 10, I get to pass. It's I can't get double lasted, if that makes sense in that situation. The player that has 10 activations still always gets to go last. They just don't get to do it twice in a row.
The not being able to switch who goes last is a very important aspect of this. Because the MCP version of this doesn't allow that, but like the Armada version of that allows that, where you have a certain amount of passes that you can use anytime in the game, but it could switch who goes last in a turn. So I think they've actually taken like the best of both worlds, where you limit the number of passes and also make sure that you can't like switch who's going last with a pass, and that combined together makes what looks like a pretty good rule.
Yeah, overall, I like it. And like, I think, even Kyle, in your situation that you gave, like, one of the nice things that sometimes comes up is like a round one standing orders, right? And you end up getting a roll off and you win the roll off and you're down 9 and you're like, I really didn't want to go first. And you can just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to pass, and then, so like, that's really nice. I like that. I like the wording around on their command card, because that's Krennic's card, right? Probably specifically that they're calling out there, and maybe others that I'm not thinking of, which is good because that helps add up, because that could have been a way that an Empire player could have like hid order tokens or something, so that you couldn't pass. But so yeah, no, I overall all net positive, I think, on this.
Yeah, I do think they need to work on their syntax a little bit here, because just the way that it reads, they say the number of face-up order tokens their army has on the battlefield in that player's order pool and on their command cards. The whole face-up order token thing reads like it applies to all three of those things, when the only one of those where you could possibly have a face-up order token is on the battlefield.
I guess.
Yeah, so there should be like, I don't know. That just needs to be worded slightly differently.
Right. Or just adding like tokens in that player's order pool and tokens on their command cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have fixed it.
Right. Yeah. The intent here is pretty clear. Just
right, because you don't have face-up order tokens on any of those other things. But yes.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I never thought I'd say this about a pass mechanic, but I like it.
Yeah.
Good job, AMG. Slow clap.
Well, it was, I mean, because when we were talking about this, I had brought up Kill Team, like they've got a really good mechanic for Kill Team, right? And we were trying to like figure out what would be the one, but I'm really impressed that they came up with something that I think is pretty great.
Yeah,
it's enough. It's like enough to advantage, but not enough disadvantage, if that makes any sense. For the player who's up on orders, it's not truly disadvantage to them, but it's enough an advantage if you want to play like an 8 or 9 activation list, that you feel like you have some like you have some leeway in the game to make some decisions. So it's good. It's great list.
It makes you feel less bad about running a low activation list while not eliminating the activation advantage. Yeah. But we should talk real quick about how fire support interacts with this.
Yep.
So when you fire support with a unit, you then flip that unit's token face down, which means that you've only taken 1 activation, but you now have 2 face down order tokens. Right. So you can essentially fire support to like increase your chance of being able to pass. An example of this would be, suppose you each have 10 activations. You go first, you fire support. You now have 8 activations remaining. Your opponent has 10, they go second. They now have 9 activations remaining, and you have 8. You can now pass.
Yeah.
Even though you both still have 10 activations on the table, and even though you both started the turn with 10 activations and nothing has died. I
like it though, because for someone who's used fire support before, like sometimes if it doesn't do what you intended, or like you blank out or something, you're like, oh, for God's sakes, I just wasted all, so yeah, it's good.
It essentially like eliminates the tempo disadvantage that you get from fire supporting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I think is fine, personally.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like that's gaming the system. It feels like it's kind of a built-in thing for this. So.
Agreed.
All right. Should we talk about the cover stuff?
I guess.
I am not nearly as positive about this stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so to recap, line of sight is now reciprocal, which means that you check from any part of a silhouette to any part of your target silhouette. Everything has silhouettes now, including vehicles and notch-based trooper units.
Yep.
There is no more center to center line. So let's hit that first, and then we can separately talk about wound allocation. Thoughts purely on the cover and line of sight changes.
I'm gonna miss my land laser.
I hated that part of the game anyways, so I'm fine with it.
But shooting lasers on the table is so much fun.
Like, listen, Kyle knows this. I've played Kyle. Nothing has annoyed me more than when we do that. So like I get so annoyed. And
Because I'm
so-
always catching your units out of cover doing it.
yeah, but like in ridiculous ways. And so I hated it. I hated it so much. And so I'm fine, right? I think it speeds it up a little bit more, right? Because you're not like, I mean, John and I had a bunch of like line of sight questions at PAX. Like I think we called the judge over like 5 times during our games because it was just like, okay, here's the center line, here's his center. Did it go through this piece of terrain? You know, and it's just like, dude, let's just move this game along. Like, so I'm on the opposite side of Kyle on this. I think it's good. Speeds the game up, makes things better for faster play. I like it.
One thing that isn't it definitely that have to be thought about is like what makes or what type of terrain everything is will be a little bit different, right? Like like traditionally like a boxy building is like, well, this is LOS blocking, but you can't really get cover off of it, right? If you're stepping out to shoot, you're stepping out in the open more or less.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're gonna be able to stand behind, like a building will be able to be like LOS blocking and cover.
I'll have the Congo line.
All hail the Congo line. And also like how things are shaped on their edges. Like a lot of train makers, including me, like when I was making our train for our store, like incorporated the old rules and how like the physical shape of the train. And in the future that might have to change a little bit just to like as the new rules develop and how we sort of get used to how they work with train and stuff. I don't think it'll be too big a deal, but it is something to consider. And like when you're building your boards, what train goes where might have to be a little bit like thought differently of a little bit.
Yeah. Bye, Kyle.
Sorry, I'm grabbing a prop.
Kyle's leaving.
I don't know. It's just like because I know like we have like for our store, I made a Tatooine table, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly if all those buildings become heavy cover as well as line of sight blocking, now there's going to be way more cover. Like basically it'll be very rare for that whole table to have an open shot ever, because you just get a bunch of cover. Whereas it used to be like I designed it so that it would be like, oh, there's a bunch of LOS blocking, but not a lot of like cover. So if you're stepping out to shoot, you're stepping out to shoot. So things like that will just have to be a little bit rethought, which isn't like good or bad. It's just like something to think about for people who are setting up train or making train or whatever.
So I like the reciprocal line of sight on the silhouettes. I think that's fine. I'm a little bit uncertain about how this is going to affect vehicles and notch-based trooper minis. I feel like with models that are that big, this could actually add time and not take away from it. Particularly because, at least as it is written, you do the entire step, including picking a point to draw a line of sight from, separately for each mini, which means that you could have situations with like big vehicles where, you know, one mini is in the open from one spot on your giant AAT silhouette, but not another. And then the second mini is in the open from a completely different spot, but not the first spot you looked. But because you repeat, at least as written, you repeat the entire process for each mini, you could get a situation where you're like looking from different spots for the same shot. Somebody on the Discord, I won't take credit for this was Hob, did like a drawing where it was a barricade with 3 minis behind it, and like 2 of them were sort of on the sides, and they would have all had cover from like straight on, but you take an AA5 and you basically drift park it up towards the barricade, so it's sideways. And then if you look from like one side of the AA5, you get the right side model out of cover, and if you look from the other side of the AA5, you get the left side model out of cover. So it's a no cover shot, even though all 3 minis are behind the barricade. So it's possible there's going to be weird stuff like that with the silhouettes.
Yeah.
I think generally the silhouettes are, I don't know. We'll see how it ends up being on vehicles. I think the reciprocal line of sight on trooper silhouettes is fine. The line laser thing. I know that you hate the line laser, Jay.
I do. I hate it.
I hate that this is now cover. When before it was
Kyle
not.
is holding.
I'm
one
holding up.
miniature next to a barricade.
Yeah, he's got basically a millimeter of his base is behind the barricade, and the rest of him is visible. This is now cover when it was not before.
Good. Here's my thing.
Okay.
Kyle, Tim, you guys are very precise players, and that's great. And I appreciate that about you guys. But I also effing hate it about you guys like so much. And so I'm fine with this because it's just like, yeah, cover. Okay, move on.
Now
Like,
it's just everything has cover basically.
yeah, great. Or it doesn't. Like, I mean, it makes it
But
faster,
most-
simpler. It's fine.
But mostly it does, because the space that you can get cover is like significantly wider from one piece of terrain.
Like
And the angles.
as with what I was saying about buildings too, it's like a barricade now, instead of being able to provide cover for like 2 or 3 minis, maybe 4, you can now get like 7 or 8 cover behind a barricade.
Okay.
Which like that's a like not a good or a bad thing. That's just like a statement, right? And the good or bad will come from like, if like I just worry that like, especially like I'll set up a table how I usually set it up, and it'll have way more like cover than I intended to have, just because I'm used to it, which is I'm an
Yeah.
old dinosaur apparently. I'll have to get used to it. But
Yeah, granddad, you will.
it's just looking at a table, there's going to be like looking from old rules to new rules, there's going to be way more cover than you'd expect, I think.
So, okay, yes. So here's what I would say though. I think depending on if they change the amount of terrain per table, like in the book, they say 25% to what, 35% of the table should be terrain. We've never really listened to that, and we've all gone to 40 to 45% on most tables, right? In the past, any good table where we're like, that's a great table, it's like 40 to
Hang on.
45% terrain.
It's not 45, it's more like 30.
No, you're wrong, Kyle.
All right.
I think the range, instead of being I think the range is up more like 33 to like 45 instead of 25 to 35 at
Yeah.
like a lot of tournaments, right? Like it's the bell curve is pushed over
Yeah.
to the right instead of being on the where they defined.
And so
Yeah,
I think
that's
now
definitely true.
now you could go back. I think you would go back towards what I don't know if they're going to change this in the book, but if they keep it to 25 to 35% or whatever it was, like that, okay, yeah, no, that makes more sense.
Yeah, my summary of this, I think, and I'm sure this is what they're going for. I think this will be easier and faster for casual games, and I think that it will take longer for competitive games.
Yep.
And I think the reason for that is because competitive games inherently use more precision, which is personally what I like about Legion, is that it was built for that. But the line laser was like, it was quick, it was simple, it was objective, and it didn't require you to bend over or have your opponent check anything on your side of the table. Now that it's just line of sight, like you're gonna have to bend over the table, and you might even have to call your opponent to come bend over the table. There's gonna be a lot more bending, and maybe this is like right, but you didn't have to, because you could just use the line laser 90%.
But I'm not a nerd like you, Kyle. I just did it. All right. I think really the big winners here are the dewbacks.
Well, yeah, their silhouette is like way smaller.
Yeah. No more shooting my tail, you dummies.
Yeah. And speeder bikes,
Yeah.
interestingly, get a lot more cover. Yeah, I feel like the laser thing was, since like technically it was 2 steps, right? But if either of those steps fail, they don't get cover. So you could kind of just intuitively like do whichever step was most likely to fail, and skip the other one.
Yeah.
And most, like 90% of the time, that was the center to center line. So you could do most cover checks without bending and just either use a range ruler or a line laser, or just do center to center line. And you're done. That's the only thing you need to do. Now you got to bend over. You might have to have your opponent bend over. Look, one of the reasons that I loved Legion coming from 40K was specifically because of that, like, center to center line dance, the fact that positioning mattered so much, the fact that like specific angles and lanes and flanking mattered so much. Now I feel like it's kind of watering down that strategy a little bit and that precision by just being like, most of the time everything's just going to be in cover unless you have just completely flanked something. I don't know. I think that's boring. I'm not sure that it's actually going to save time, at least not at the competitive level. But
Like, I know, like, looking from minis to like mini to mini, having at least one point that was solid helps be like, right, like when you're trying to look between 2 points or measure between 2 points, if both of them are floating, right, if you can, both of them are adjustable, then it takes way longer than if you have one solid point going to a floating point.
yeah, or even a solid point to a solid point, which is what the center to center was.
Well, yeah, I mean, like that was the solid point, but like when you're looking at, like, assuming it goes center to center, then looking for obscurity, like now you're gonna have to check, like, especially at a competitive level, from like all points of a silhouette to all points of a silhouette. So you're checking 2 planes against each other, whereas before it was a point to a plane, which
Okay. I hear what you guys are saying, but I feel like this is more of a TTS problem than it is a real life problem.
Oh, I think it's going to be way easier on TTS because
Yep.
TTS, you can use your hovering drone point of view to not have to bend over for starters, but you can also just click a little button and those silhouettes come up with 100% precision.
Yeah, I mean,
On the
here's
table, you
thing.
got to put the little plastic silhouette behind the dude. You got to put your own little plastic silhouette behind the dude because you can check from any point on it. For vehicles, you have to actually do like an abstraction where you probably put like a range ruler or a barricade like next to the vehicle's base, and then put like another one up on top of the vehicle to see where the corner point is. Like, this sounds like a pain in the ass.
The other thing that caught my eye in the article too is, and that I'm going from memory, correct me if I'm wrong, but it said that the silhouettes are now cylinders over the bases instead of being behind it, which does, like, for 95 to 99% of cases won't matter. But like when you're shooting from like up higher to down low, like the like little thing behind the guy is actually not going to be quite correct. Like you're going to have to abstract that cylinder.
Yeah.
Because where the edge is, like where the back corners are, like if you have a flat plane behind a mini, those back corners, if you're looking from above, extend out farther than they should. So that could get some weird nuances that will be weird.
It's gonna get weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I don't know, maybe this was just for the article, but the thing that didn't make any sense to me is it's like they took the silhouettes from before with the little notch in the top and they were like, oh, that's for the base now, but they still had it standing up, so the notch was at the top of the silhouette. If it's for the base, it would be reverse, right? So I was confused by that. Like, why do we need a notch?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
it's just a silhouette. You just put a thing behind it, but yeah, you're right. The cylinder part is the tough part, right? Because how do you even
You have to do a little bit of thinking and like
Yeah.
imagination.
right.
Yeah, which is never good when you're talking about
Yep.
trying to come up with an objective process to evaluate something.
I also think like all my silhouettes that I use right now are all like opaque, like they're just like 3D printed ones.
What?
Well, I was gonna say I am gonna use our own Fifth Trooper ones. Yay, plug. Get
Those are 3D printed, right?
No, they're laser cut.
Oh, those are laser cut. Yeah.
But my point being that like
Same thing to me.
having a clear silhouette might be important now because you actually need to.
Yep.
It's like I gotta look through this whole thing.
Yeah.
You can't just look over. Like I gotta put a notch at the top and look through that. So
Yeah. And like that's gonna need to get changed, right? Those notches don't matter anymore. And there's a lot of changes that so people were asking me about productization, right? And like what I was like, I don't know, I gotta rethink the whole silhouette now. And then this other one, the other one, which is, it's strange. You're right, because they did say cylinder in this particular section as well, but they have silhouettes. But then when they were talking about vehicles, they had cylinders, but they don't have any silhouettes, and it's just like, okay.
Like
What?
for me personally, especially like I have my own 3D printers. Like I think I'm going to like make myself some models of like like especially for like big tournaments, whatever. Especially like let's say I'm bringing an ATRT, like I might just print off a like base with a big block chunk of plastic on top of it and be like, this is my ATR silhouette. If it's really important, we'll mark it, replace it, and can you see that? Because that isn't that hard to do with if you have your own 3D printer. And like for same thing for troopers, like that a TTS cylinder that is so easy to use. Like I'm probably gonna print a few of those off in my bag, and then if it's really whatever, mark the mini, replace it, which isn't exact because anytime you replace something, it moves slightly. But that might have to be the way you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to get some weird abstractions too. Again, specifically with vehicles, but where an ATST is standing in front of an archway and it like cannot see a unit through the top of the archway where you would normally look, but like you go down to its ankles and you just shoot through the archway and it's in the open. Or like troops that are right up next to an AA5 can basically shoot from their feet underneath the AA5 to some far target. Which, I mean, you could be like, okay, they're lying down and shooting prone underneath the AA5, whatever, that's fine. You got to use some imagination here. But
yeah, I will say the contradiction, I was kind of joking about the Dubek before, but the problem is there's already a contradiction in what they're saying, because they're saying it's a cylinder including the base that's rising up, and then the notched trooper base silhouette would not be a cylinder that includes the miniatures base and the area above it. Like that, those are two different things, because there's a bunch of notched troopers that have different base sizes, so this would not work the same.
Well, and I think they say that you're supposed to like move it around the base, that the silhouette for the notched base trooper is essentially just a height, and you got to like move it around the base, pretending like the base was a cylinder.
Sure.
I know
that's crazy talk.
It's weird. It ends up in, because the silhouette is like roughly as high as an FD cannon.
Yep.
So a mortar or an MK2 now has a silhouette that is like the height of an FD cannon.
Yep.
Which could be good or bad depending on how you look at it. I think emplacements get a huge benefit from these cover rules anyway, particularly the loss of the center to center line, because historically for like single model units, if you're on the corner of a building or something, it's very difficult to like get your center behind the line of sight blocker and still be able to shoot. Now they just have to have a smidgen of a toe behind it and they get cover. So
and not only that, but they also can, because of the silhouette rules, they can also just like stick a smidgen of their silhouette out of the corner too.
Right,
like, because that was always the thing, is you had to stick basically your center out because you had to shoot from the center.
Right.
Down wall. Whereas now you can be like, well, I'm going to stick a millimeter of my silhouette out from behind this building,
and I'm going to shoot from over here.
Right. Yeah. But this is the shit that used to piss me off with Kyle. Right. Is that he would just see a corner of my silhouette and I couldn't see him because I was hiding, but he could see like a little fraction of my silhouette, and then he would, well, I can shoot it, I could see it. There's just
for the record, I love the reciprocal line of sight thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that is mutually exclusive with the center line thing, but whatever.
Yeah. I'm not
I don't know. I'm just coming down on you hard, Kyle.
Yeah, I know.
Because I feel like it tonight.
Yeah.
The reciprocal is probably good. It's also like, it's not really good or bad. It's a thing. Yeah. It's just gonna, like, the play will have to be adjusted, right?
Yep.
I think I think it's straightforward. It's just whether you like it or don't at this point, right? I think the thing that gets confusing is all the cylinder silhouette nonsense outside of trooper units. Like, because you're just like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I also think that cylinder, like for people who play TTS like even once, and you see those cylinders, they make a lot of intuitive sense once you like
Yeah.
see them visualized. If someone who's never seen one of those, I could see like trying to imagine what that would look like could be a bit weird. Which is another reason I want to just bring like
Yeah.
literal models of him, just because it's like even if it's simple for everyone to understand, it's like this is what we're shooting at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
actually I also just thought it would be super funny if someone like took all their models and like cast them in like clear resin blocks that were the silhouettes.
that would be cool. Yeah,
That'd be
would
really
take
funny.
So much effort, but
That'd
it'd
be a lot of
so
work.
cool.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it definitely helps the ATST, this new cylinder
Yeah.
thing, you know,
I
which
agree.
is great because it needed it, because from an but that's just one unit, right? Like the ATST needed the help because it's like, oh, they're behind cover. Great. There's nothing I can do about this. You know what I mean? And so I do like that. I just don't, they seem to be taking rules and just applying them across the boards to things similar to what they did with the points. And you're just like, no, this is a little bit more nuanced than that. Like there's a lot more going on with each different miniature here. So you can't just say one thing because that's just not how this works. But
One thing this helps that warms my little soul is that like standby sharing to saber tanks got a whole lot better again.
yep.
Because it used to be pretty easy to like corner peek like the day like a saber tank couldn't see you and you could see them, or like you just avoid being seen so you don't trigger the standby. Whereas now like that's a dinner plate sized LOS sort of zone that's going to be a lot
Yep.
harder to avoid.
We will see if exemplar especially given the pass mechanic, we will see if exemplar survives the crucible of rules changes.
Yeah.
If it does, I'm probably going to play Anakin Padme with standby sharing with the 9 activation pass thing. But yeah, I think just real quick, like winners and losers from the cover stuff. Winners is stuff that likes cover because there's just going to be more of it and it's going to be much harder to catch units out of cover. So I think this is mostly slightly more pikes, white save units like pikes. You know, imagine a Shadow Collective list, and now just imagine that you can't get them out of cover most of the time. Losers, I think the biggest loser here probably is, besides precision, sniper strike teams.
Can you explain that to me?
Sniper strike teams.
I understand striker sniper.
Striker.
I understand sniper strike teams. Explain to me why they're the losers in this exactly.
Because sniper strike teams get a lot of their value from lining up light cover or no cover shots. When sniper strike teams are constantly shooting into heavy cover, they're quite bad, and they're usually firing from quite a bit of range away, which means in order to line up those light to no cover shots, you had to kind of like thread shots between terrain pieces.
Yep.
And now the whole like threading shots between terrain pieces is just straight up not going to be a thing anymore.
Okay.
If you're shooting at something and there's terrain pieces that are within like a 6-inch band of where you're shooting, the thing is going to have cover.
That makes sense. Okay, because there was a moment with the thing that they changed and went back to was the wound allocation thing, right? And so like
that's another reason that sniper strike teams kind of get hit by these, but
okay. But I thought that was reversed so that it didn't do what we thought it did.
It's not as bad.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the cover changes are a bigger impact on them because they're going to be shooting into heavy cover so much more often than they were before. Yeah.
That's fair.
And that goes for all long range units with low dice pools too, not just sniper strike teams. But I think Aiden will be fine because she's got marksman. Same with Cassian. But normal schlubs that are just slinging 2 dice and have sharpshooter are going to be sad. Okay. Wound allocation.
Let's do it.
All right. So we've already kind of talked about this, but you can assign wounds to any model, whether they can be seen or not. And then the actual text that they snippeted for us: when a unit suffers wounds from an attack, if the attacker has LOS to only some of the miniatures in the defending unit. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I promised that we were going to talk about something with the cover. I want to, before I forget about it, let's go back to this real quick.
I already forgot about it.
Okay. So let me read this real quick.
Yeah.
This is the definition of obscured. If LOS to any part of the defending miniature silhouette is blocked by terrain other than the terrain in base contact with the attacking unit leader, and a part of the silhouette is still visible, the defending miniature is obscured. So, at least what this text says is that a unit that is completely invisible, in other words, you cannot see any part of its silhouette, is not obscured. Because for a mini to be obscured, you have to be able to see part of the silhouette. That's literally what this says, Jay. I see your weird look.
What?
If LOS to any part of the defending miniature silhouette is blocked by terrain other than terrain in base contact with the attacking unit leader, and a part of the silhouette is still visible, the defending miniature is obscured. Now,
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so they're right. But
no, there's some caveats here. The first is that we could simply be missing some other sub bullet where it says that units that you cannot see at all always qualify as obscured. Maybe. I don't know. That's entirely possible. And if that's the case, then this essentially works like it currently does. And whatever. It's also possible that this is essentially intentional. Somebody brought up a kind of like a realism example. Like, suppose, you've got like a street, right? And you've got a squad of dudes at the end of that street, and like one guy is standing in the middle of the street, and the other four guys you can't see at all because they're behind a building. You shoot the one guy, like you're only shooting at the one guy. You can't hurt the other four dudes.
Right.
But you can hurt the one guy, and the one guy you're shooting at is in the open.
Yep. Oh, that's interesting.
So I could see this being kind of that. The problem is if you get to step 3, determine cover. If at least half the miniatures in the defending unit are obscured, the defending unit has cover, which means that those hidden miniatures, at least as this is currently written, count in the denominator, basically. So let me give an example. In the dude standing in the street in the open example, he gets shot. That's no cover because he's in the open and you're not shooting the other four guys. Fine, that makes total sense. What if that dude is behind a barricade and the other four guys are completely hidden and you shoot that dude? Based on this, you take the total unit count. You have one unit that's in heavy cover and obscured behind that barricade, and you have 4 models that are not obscured because they're behind.
Yep.
So you have 1 out of 5 models as obscured. That's no cover, right? Even though the one guy you can see is behind a barricade. So for this to work like that, if that's actually their intent, then you would have to only include visible models in the like half or more miniatures thing. I don't know. We'll see how this ends up shaking out. Either interpretation, I think, is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It seems like we're missing some rules text here.
Yeah, and it gets even stranger with wound allocation.
Right.
Because if we use your example, so this will transition us into wound allocation. Yeah. If we use your example and they shoot that guy out in the open, he doesn't necessarily die. You could then assign that wound to one of the guys behind the building and let them die. And
right.
And
the dude is still there. Yeah. Right. The purpose of this was to get rid of heavy scoping, basically.
Yeah.
Which
is good.
I think the intent is fine.
Yeah.
As someone that was personally very good at doing that.
Yeah. I hated it. I hated it so much.
I don't mind that this is gone.
Yeah.
I understand that that's like a negative play experience for people that they can get surprised by.
Yep.
I think that there are going to be like a sort of unintended butterfly effect from this.
Sure.
Because scoping was always just kind of an extension of how the wound allocation rules work in a way that normally makes sense, which is that you can kill the guys you can see. And that also has gameplay implications too that generally make sense and prevent gamey tactics. Like, for example, suppose you have an intercept point near the center and there's a line of sight blocker next to it. Under the old rules, if you stuck your unit leader out there to score and you hid the other 4 dudes behind the line of sight blocker out of sight, the first time that unit got shot, the unit leader would die and they would no longer be a scoring unit, right? Now, unless we're missing some other rules, when that unit gets shot, you can just pick up a dude behind the building, one dude, because your wounds are capped by the number of models you can see, and that unit leader still sits there.
Where this gets crazy, someone brought up, like, okay, so if I have a group of 8 B1s and I hide 7 of them behind that wall, and you just shoot to the unit leader, you can only do 1 wound, so it's going to take you 7 attacks to get to kill that entire unit and get them off the objective.
Yeah. So this may be the devil you know is better than the one you don't kind of situation. I think we'll see. I'm a little bit nervous that this is like, the little old lady that swallowed a fly. Like the fly is terrain scoping, and then she's gonna swallow a spider. Yeah, that's some fix for terrain scoping, and then they're gonna have to swallow a cat or whatever the next thing is. I guess
that
we'll see
escalated quick.
Yeah,
spider to cat.
Yeah, I don't remember what's after the spider. There's definitely a cat in there somewhere.
I think it's like a frog, but
okay. Yeah. Anyway, it goes all the way up to a horse, and then she dies.
Yeah.
But
dark story. Yeah,
it's a kid's book.
I get what you're saying, right? And I think, I sometimes the best intentions, right? Like they're like, this sucks for players. Well, let's do it this way. And then you got guys like us who are degenerates going, all right, well, I'll just put 7 B1s behind this line of sight blocking, and I'll leave my unit leader out there, and you'll never get him off that objective. Cool. Yeah, good rule. I like this new rule.
Yeah.
I mean, it can also be like, because a lot of one of the things that people are always, especially new players, they go like when the like a strike team and a sniper, the sniper teleports when he gets shot, I guess, in the current rules. Right. Well, now you could take like a B1 E5S squad and put just the E5S out. Well, everything's gonna get heavy cover.
Yep.
But this thing is just very impossible to remove, because now again it takes 8 shots to remove it.
Right.
And,
might get heavy cover. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how that's gonna work. I feel like there has to be rules text missing too, because right now in the current rules you can shoot without your unit leader seeing technically. If you did that as these are worded with the thing that we just talked about, where minis that are not visible don't contribute to cover, you could basically just like proactively hide your unit leader behind cover, and then your target automatically gets no cover.
Yep.
So
we're degenerates.
If that's intentional and not just like a typo, then there has to be some other thing that we're not seeing about unit leaders.
But let's say you have, like, hypothetically your unit leader has to be able to see. Well, then you put your unit leader in E5S out, and now it takes 4 shots still to kill it.
Right.
Like the same sort of. Okay, so sniper strike teams are no longer able to like chuck their sniper rifle behind a corner, but every other unit in the game can.
Right.
I mean, this starts to, because I was thinking about this more as your analogy that really hurts snipers as well. So like, if we're using that one guy out and the other guy's behind the building analogy, the way we run snipers right now, and the way you would still kind of run them with the wound, well, the way the wounds are handed out is you would keep one behind line of sight. But if he's not eligible, generally your snipers are out in the open.
Yep.
And so you're saying that there's no cover.
And then you have to, because
so now low profile means nothing. And
right.
So,
and because the guy sticking out is the unit leader, you have to kill the guy that's hidden first. And then the next time that unit gets shot, they're out there.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, but they were out, but that's the question too, right? If there's no clarification, we could say they were potentially out there too already, because if the guy behind the building doesn't qualify for the cover because he's not obscured or visible, there's too many questions around that.
Yeah, it starts getting weird.
Right, because now you got no cover for a sniper who has low profile, who thrives on cover. So it's like, what? So it's
Yeah.
actually better for me to just have my snipers out behind heavy cover than, it's
Yeah.
weird.
And there's one more way that this is weird, and that's it talks about the total wound threshold, not the actual remaining wounds of units. So if you get like a multi-wound unit like Wookiees, suppose you have 2 Wookiee models that are visible, but one of them has 2 wounds on them. That's 4 wounds that you can see, right? But since it's wound threshold, that's 6 wounds worth of wound threshold. So that could be a situation in theory where you could like overkill. You kill the 2 models that you can see, and then also do 2 more wounds to models that you can't see, just because of how this is worded. That has impact too with things like speeder bikes and other, multi-model units where you have multiple wounds. I would have personally, like, if their intent was to just be like, we don't like heavy scoping, which I think that's noble. I know that that's not a popular thing. Just make it so that when a unit takes a recover action, you can swap out a regular dude for a defeated heavy model. Like, sure, you probably still want to try and avoid your heavies getting scoped, but if it happens, like the next time that unit goes, just put the heavy back in the unit.
Or you could even literally just say, when you remove models, you can like replace, like you can like switch them for each other as you kill them.
I think that's the problem with that is you're essentially turning every unit into a sniper strike team with the character removal, because you could peek your heavy and then he teleports to safety when you get shot.
Yeah,
I like your recover option better,
right?
but, like,
because then that costs you an action to get your heavy back, so it removes the incentive to do it on purpose, basically. But anyway, yeah, I think that would have much more narrowly addressed the heavy scoping problem specifically without creating potentially other issues, but I don't know. We'll see.
yeah. I mean, again, without context of the rest of the rules, if they've changed other things or reworded stuff, we just don't know.
Yep.
100%.
And it could be something of over engineering it, and trying to like outsmart a situation that could have had a simple explanation,
Right.
As an engineering student, we have whole classes dedicated to that.
Yeah, like a Rube Goldberg machine, basically, for rules fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
There was a slide that I showed in like first year design class, which is like, this company was trying to do this, fix an assembly line, and an engineer come up with like this like $2 million solution, and then the technician came in with a piece of duct tape and like covered it and went, fixed. So often Occam's razor is a useful tool.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah.
TLDR for me. I love the pass thing. Never thought I'd say that. I hate that my line laser. Okay, the line laser, real quick.
No. Go ahead.
You're just doing it differently, because now you just do edge to edge.
Yeah.
Whatever. I missed the center to center. And then I think that this wound scoping fix might end up just solving one problem and creating 2 more. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll just use my line laser to shine into other people's eyes for legal reasons.
There you go. I'm still gonna bring mine.
Same.
It's like a comfort, So it's kind of like a stuffed animal that a kid sleeps with. I'm gonna bring my line laser and just put it in my pocket so that it's there, that I can just feel it.
Literally never had one. Never wanted one. Never even cared.
Well,
that's too bad.
Evan and I always played on a much more relaxed version of Legion, the
which
way
is
we're
fine.
going.
Like you
Yeah.
can, the nice thing about the center to center is you can scale it to your experience, Jay.
Yep.
If you want to use that precision, you can. If you don't, you don't have to.
Well, now we still don't have to. It's all good.
Yeah, but now I can't use the precision.
Yeah. It's for the best.
All right. You guys got any final thoughts?
It's, I think, 70-30 positive. I think 70% of the stuff we saw was positive. 30% is questionable. I don't want to say negative yet because we don't have the full picture, but questionable. But 70% great points. I think most of the points changes outside the generic stuff was great. I think the cover and line of sight, I think a good chunk of it was fine. And what was the other thing?
Passing.
Passing. I think that was great. Like I have
Yeah.
no real fault for that. So 70-30.
I'm slightly grumpy because I went from being fairly sure what I was going to bring to LVO to now I'm back to like 5 options.
Right. And you're not really going to be able to make that decision until the 16th. I think that's the thing that really bothers me. It's not so much the time because of, like, we'll get the rules. Like I think everybody who plays this game is relatively intelligent. So like, everybody will pick up the rules and we'll muddle through them at LVO and figure it out. But like, it's the fact of what Tim just said, where it's like, well, I don't know what list to play because I don't know what the rules are. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, and you got 10 days to work it out. Really,
Well,
like 5 because of flying and everything else. Like, come on.
The thing I'm maybe especially grumpy over, that might be the right word, is like, this is specifically me going to LVO, which there's only 150 people playing, so this isn't universal by any means. But like, my painting time was going to be over Christmas.
Yep.
And now I think I'm going to end up having to paint, like, instead of painting the list I'm going to play, I'm going to paint like double the models and give myself options, which, hooray, it'll force me to actually paint some of my stuff. But it does mean that instead of having like 2 or 3 days of painting to do, I'm probably going to spend a week. I have like 5 hours a day, which, woe was me. But I wish the rules are coming January 1st. I wish it was like new year, new rules, boom.
Or like now.
Or now, but
Yeah.
or now.
Yeah.
The slow drip of information, I generally don't like it, but the like 1 topic per day has actually been kind of nice. Where there's been a small explosion of Legion news every day, and then the Legion community sets its hair on fire, but it's over one thing instead of like
everything at once.
Yeah.
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 Well,
I get that. It's just, for me, I'm just like, well, but now we're like, yeah, sure, we get the articles, we get a podcast, blah 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 blah. But like, my thing is, the problem that I have is like, well, you're asking me I got to talk about stuff I have no context for. So I'm just talking out my butt. And then what's going to happen is whatever we say wrong in these, or if we change our mind once we get the full context, people will, you guys were talking bad about this and now you're saying something different. It's like, yeah, because we didn't have all the facts.
Right.
Like, we're just, I don't know.
You guys were so wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, we didn't.
Yeah, I didn't have any of the facts.
Obviously.
I literally had 3 paragraphs. So that's what we made our decision on. But it's something to talk about. So positive, like I said, 70% positive, 30% not even negative, just questionable because I don't know the context. But yeah, overall good. I think they're doing okay so far.
I mean, even more than that, I think like probably like 50% of the things that we've seen so far are like, there are things that are happening that are like neither good nor bad. They're happening.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're changing the rules in like very sort of neutral ways, and that like it worked this way before and it's going to work this way now. And it's like not really good or bad, at least in my opinion, which is sort of like, yeah, it's happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Where are you at? What's your percentage, Kyle? So Tim's at a 50% ambivalent. Where
It's hard to put a percentage on it because
Mr. Numbers not wanting to put numbers to things
well,
now.
I hate to like like belay this, but the whole like the center to center thing is something that I really enjoyed about Legion coming from other miniatures games, because it meant that your angles were important, the specific position of your units was important, flanking was important, movement and setting up moves for shots was really important. I personally, like, I think this is going to be more boring from like a, you know, you're going to move up, you're going to roll dice, stuff's going to be in cover. You know, distance has always mattered, and that will still matter, but that's going to be like the primary thing that matters now instead of angles. And I really enjoyed about Legion that angles mattered coming from 40k, where it's essentially irrelevant. And now they're going to matter a little bit, but it's like you're going to have to like completely flank something to get it out of cover, which is going to be speeder bikes basically. You know, you're never going to be able to do that with a trooper unit. Not that I don't want to say never, but it's going to be a lot harder. And I don't think that's very interesting. And I don't really think I don't think you're actually gaining time by cutting that requirement. So I am sad about that. I am surprised that I'm not sad about the pass thing, which I think is great. I think that's a great mechanic. And I think I'm neutral. I'm in a wait and see approach on the scoping thing, because I feel like that could end up, you know, being worse, based on how they fully implement this solution to it. But I think it's hard to know without seeing like more actual rules text. So I guess that means I'm like 50-50, because that's like one thing that I really don't like, one thing that I like, and one thing that I don't have enough information on. 50-50. There you go.
True mathematicians.
Yep.
50-50 for both of you. And it took you forever to explain it to me. So this is just like math class.
I was also gonna say, you saying 50% ambivalent sounds very funny to me. Like I'm on the fence about being on the fence.
Yep.
Yep. Well, everybody, Jay Schlansky here, 70% positive. So
There you go.
all good.
60% of the time it works every time.
Listen, I get where you guys are coming from. And I think we've known this for a long time, but I play the game very differently than you guys. So this kind, you know, a lot of these changes just factor into the way I liked playing the game anyways. So it's a positive for me. Because we just liked different things. That's the great thing about this game, right? Is we all like different things about it. And so,
Yeah.
and I understand, Kyle, that some of the things you really enjoyed about Legion may no longer be part of Legion. So I can understand that being upsetting. So I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if upsetting is the right word. I'm sad. I will still play Legion. I will still enjoy it.
I'm being empathetic. Just let me be
Okay.
empathetic.
All right.
I don't do this very often. Let me just have this.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you, Jay.
You. Yeah.
Thank
there
you.
we go.
Thank you.
Well, we'll
I'm
see
still-
though. You know,
yeah.
we'll keep going.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yeah, we've got 2 more articles to go. So,
But didn't they say, this doesn't mean anything, but I thought they said on this article today that this was their biggest change. So
they said, yeah, I actually think they hedged it a little bit. Let's see.
They said this could
Our
be
solution
it.
is perhaps the biggest change of all in the core rulebook.
oh yeah, that's not worded the way I read it.
No.
So
And personally, I think the cover thing is a bigger change than a pass mechanic.
yeah, I would agree.
So
I
think
they
they're
just
all,
meant addition. This is the biggest addition that we'll have,
Right.
which is completely new rule.
In their opinion, right?
Right.
Like for different people, different changes are worth different amounts.
Listen, I'm not opposed. I understand, Kyle. I get where you're coming from. I'm just not opposed to making this more accessible of a game so more people play it.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced that it actually does that.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll see, right?
Because I think you're just, especially with the whole like looking from any part of the silhouette thing.
Yeah.
I think it's possible you're essentially just like shifting where you spend your time because it is more of an abstraction.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't know.
Listen, there's some things that we talk about on here that because we're really just doing this all. I mean, I literally am like a few hours off of vacation, and so
Yeah.
like some of this stuff I know like it could maybe in a couple months I come back and be like, yeah, you guys were right. This is crazy, but in my head right now, theory crafting, I'm like, oh, this sounds great, but
I'm just leave you with a visual.
Yeah.
Heavy cover.
Yeah.
Heavy
in,
cover.
in the past, silhouettes came out very rarely in games, right?
Yeah.
I think especially in competitive play, like maybe not most shots would require silhouettes, but like there would get like I was playing competitive games where I never got the silhouettes out once.
Yep.
Where I think every competitive game I play now will require silhouettes.
Yep.
Maybe you
because
just
you're
have to have more imagination.
Well, I feel like I usually like I feel like I'm fairly able to see where that silhouette is.
Yeah.
But if I
just teasing
go,
you.
if I just stick my guy a millimeter out with the silhouette, I think I want, even for my own edification, I want to measure it because it would seem cheesy to be like, yep, he's just right. Like I feel like I'm gonna be getting my silhouette out a lot more just for myself.
Yep.
And you could get those silhouettes at thefifthtrooper.com. We'll be just for everybody because you guys have been asking. Well, of course, I'll come up with something. With the way the things are now, they can't be the same as they are now. I'm gonna have to make some changes. So I just got to think about that. And for the notch troopers, how I'm gonna do that. So I'll come up with something. I'll have them by the time the rules are out. I mean, the other thing is too, I don't really know their sizes because I don't know if those templates are accurate.
Yeah. It's weird that they
So-
didn't provide a scale on those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no sizes.
I think you could say that the small base trooper silhouette is supposed to be the same size as it is currently.
Yeah, I would guess, but you
And
don't.
then you could potentially sort of extrapolate the
Yeah.
notched one because there are squares on here. There's just no scale.
Yeah,
I don't
Gotta
know.
love it.
Yeah. I think for the purposes of like LVO, the notched, the small base trooper silhouette, I think whatever silhouette you currently have for your small base troopers is going to be like sufficient for that purpose.
Yep.
I have no idea how tall the notched base trooper silhouette is supposed to be.
Nope.
Yep.
So
Perfect.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Ready to wrap it up, I guess.
Yeah, that was a journey.
Yeah. That was a lot.
I feel like the points changes were like the least consequential thing we talked about today.
When we started, I was like, oh yeah, points. I should pull those up because
Yeah.
a lot of stuff had happened.
Yeah, yeah. Lots happened. A lot more to happen before Christmas. So
I will say, while you guys were talking, I built a 501st list that for the first time ever, I went, I might play that.
yep. I think that's a positive. Net positive. There you go. Clone's got some deductions. So,
Yeah. It'd be nice if they fixed their command cards in addition to cutting their points, but
Yes.
listen.
I know beggars can't be choosers.
Although, I mean, we're dragging this on, but the like extra 1 pip in the 501st is a lot more appealing with the pass mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now going first to the 9-act list doesn't like, right? You like do your big burst at the beginning, maybe pass once in the middle, and then like try to go again near the end. Whereas before, going first to 501st often was like, because now I'm
Yeah. I wish it wasn't a 2-pip slot. And I wish it said at instead of within.
Yeah.
Yep, it's like, oh, add in a ambush. I'd rather wish this 1 pip were just a 1 pip.
Yep. All right. Well, before we get on any further rabbit trails, how about we close this out? Because I assume we're gonna have lots to talk about next week too. So
Yep.
We are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Jay.
I'm Timbo.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.